Hey there, physical science students. This is Ms. Ruark. We are in the third part of Vodcast 5.4 where we're going to finish up naming compounds. And we're going to be doing it with those nasty little boogers, the transition metals. Alright, so this is what we're going to do. Well, I've already taken you through this and talked to you about it. If the first element, you always start here at the top and we say, is the first element a metal? No, so we name the first element. This should have already been filled in, but it wasn't. That's okay. And then we name the second element. And we use IDE on the end. You have this on your notes already. And then we use prefixes to show the number of atoms. All right. What if it is a metal? Okay, so is it a transition metal? That's the next question that you need to ask. And we covered that in the last podcast where we said if it's a metal but it's not a transition metal, which means it's in groups 1 or group 2, or if it's ammonia. I haven't told you guys that yet, but that's okay. I'm filling it in now. If it's group 1, group 2, or if it's ammonia, then we're going to go to the left, or to the right, excuse me. Name the first element, name the second element using IDE if it is, in fact, an element. All right, so the next question is, well, what if it is a transition metal? What if it is? What if it's in that swimming pool or under the staircase? Okay, well, if that's the case, then we've got to find the charges on the metal. And how do we do that? Well, we cross up. Okay, we cross up. We cross up our subscripts. Okay, don't worry. We'll practice. All right, so once we cross up our subscripts, we have to check the charge on the anion. We need to adjust if needed. Not too many of them you need to adjust, but some of them you do. And then we'll name the first element using Roman numerals to show the charge on the ion. And then we name the second element using IDE if it's an element. If it's not just a single element, then we use the name of the polyatomic ion. Okay. These are going to give us the worst problems. That's why I wanted to do these last, so that we could have lots of time to practice. So let's look at some in practice. Yes, let's look at some in practice. Okay. Now, since we haven't covered polyatomic ions, we're not going to do 4, we're not going to do 5, and we're not going to do 8. We'll come back to those. All right, so in this one, we actually have a mixture of metals that are first, second group, and we also have transition metals. That way you'd have the practice at it. So in this first one, the first element is iron. And iron, if you look at your periodic table, is in the swimming pool. All right, so since it is a transition metal, we have to figure out the charge on the iron. And we do that by taking these subscripts and we cross them up. Okay, so this 3 ends up becoming the charge that's on the iron, and the 2 becomes the charge that's on the oxygen. Well, metals always have a positive charge and nonmetals always have a negative charge, and so we end up finding the charge on our iron. Now we're going to write the name iron 3, and we use Roman numerals in parentheses to show the charge. So iron with a positive 3 charge, iron 3, and then oxygen, but it's got to be oxide because we want IDE at the end. Okay, if I lost you, I'm sorry. Let's try another one. If I got you and you're good, go ahead and try some more. All right, for number 2, Cr is our first element. And if you look, chromium is similar to iron. It's going to be in the same area on the periodic table. It is a transition metal. So we have to take the subscripts that we have down here and we have to cross them up. All right, well, since there's nothing written here, we said that we assumed it was a 1. So we're going to cross that up here and it becomes a 1. And this crosses up here and becomes a 2. Remember, positive always comes first on the metal, negative always goes on the nonmetal. All right, so chromium with a positive 2 charge. So we're just going to write chromium 2, and then chlorine is our element, so we make it chloride. Okay, hopefully it's not so bad anymore. All right, number 3, we have lithium listed first. So you have to look at your periodic table. Is lithium a transition metal? And hopefully you'll see that lithium is in group 1 and it is not a transition metal. So we name the first element lithium and we name the second element with IDE. So it would be lithium chloride. All right, number 6. We have Pb as our first element. Is it a metal? Yes, it is. Lead is a metal. They make pipes out of it. All right. It's kind of, it's toxic, but, in the right compounds, it won't hurt you too bad. All right. So lead is a metal. Is it a transition metal? Well, if you look, it's under the staircase. So it is in the swimming pool. It is a transition metal. So we have to take these subscripts here and we have to cross them up. All right, so that gives us a 1, and this gives us a 1. Okay, now remember when I said you got to double check your charges to make sure that they match? Well, this is where that shortcut where I showed you all the charges on the periodic table comes into play. So sulfur is in the oxygen group, and all of the elements that are nonmetals in the oxygen group have to have a -2 charge. And this right here is saying that it has a -1 charge, and we can't have that. So we've got to multiply this number by 2 to make it a -2. Well, if we multiplied or doubled this one, we have to do the same thing to this side. So we're adjusting. Okay, so now we have lead with a +2 charge. So we would put lead, Roman numeral 2, and then S for sulfur, which would be sulfide, because it's an element. All right, let's try another one. Fe. We said, yes, it is a transition metal because it's in the swimming pool. So we've got to take our subscripts and we cross them up. I'm going to write this out here so we can see it better. All right, Fe and O. Our subscripts here, we've got to cross them up, which would give us a 1 here and a 1 here. Positive always goes first. Negative always goes second. All right, now check. Can oxygen have a -1 charge? Well, remember, oxygen is in the oxygen group, and all oxygen group people make a -2 charge, which means that this can't have a -1 charge. It has to be a -2 charge. And since we've doubled this one, well, we got to double this one too. So now we have iron with a +2 charge. So we put iron, 2, and then oxygen would be oxide. Okay, now if you'll notice here, this is the reason why we do this whole mess with the transition metals, because iron here is a transition metal, and here it has a +3 charge. But look, here it has a +2 charge. Okay, so some of these can make, especially the transition metals, can make more than one charge, and that's why you have to include the Roman numeral. You have to, because if you don't, it's incorrect, because you have to tell what transition state it's in. All right, so now that you're super confused, let's get to class. When you get to class tomorrow, we'll practice lots.